are still sort of fighting for the cause for Remain, really. And apologies, Ian, because I know you're a Brexiter, but Andrew, with all the evidence pointing the pound down, industry moving out of the country, including one of my son's businesses that looks to want to move to mainland Europe, Frankfurt and Amsterdam, amongst others, wanting to get chunks of the city. What can we do to persuade the Brexiters that we're making a mistake?
Well, there's a nice, easy one to start with.
Well, I don't think you're going to persuade my friend Ian and others that Brexit is a bad idea. Let's be clear, there are very, very strongly held views on this, and we need to respect those views too. I think it's quite important that there's mutual respect between those holding different opinions on this big issue. But I think what may well happen as the process of negotiations continues, and let's be clear, we're coming up now to almost the second anniversary of the Brexit referendum. I think what may become clear is that the people need to have the final say on the terms. We had a referendum 18 months ago on the principle of Brexit,
which you were against.
Which I was against. I was strongly against. I haven't changed my mind or anything. But I think when it comes to the final terms,
just on that,
there could then be a referendum.
Just on that, given that you were against a referendum to start with, and Tom Harris eloquently says this in the Telegraph today, he says, my personal favourite of all these democratic champions are those who claim that referendums have no place in a parliamentary democracy, that they're too easily manipulated by vested interests, and that therefore we should have another one. It's rank hypocrisy to want another one when you didn't want one in the first place.
I think at the moment that's an irrelevant view, because the only way that you can make a decision following one referendum, which involves changing that decision, is by another referendum. Let's be clear what's happened.
But why the people have voted, why would we change that decision?
Well, because we've seen what the terms are. We don't like them. We, the sovereign people, who have a right to a final say before we do something as momentous as tearing up all our international alliances and trading systems and starting again, before we do that, we should have the final say. And my view is that given that there's been one referendum, if we were to do it in Parliament without consulting the people, I can just imagine, Ian, what your reaction would be, and I don't think it's going to be very favourable.
My objection is that that's exactly what Parliament is there to do.
I don't think you would think it a good idea, though, for Parliament to vote straightforwardly against what had happened in the referendum 18 months ago. So if Parliament doesn't have the power to do it, the only people then have the power to do it are the sovereign people, and that's the reason why I think the case for a referendum on the final terms is going to become overwhelmingly strong over the next 6 to 9 months.
It would massively weaken our position in the negotiations, wouldn't it? Because what incentive would there be for the EU to give us anything other than a bad deal?
I don't think they've got an incentive to give us a bad deal.
Well, they would if there was going to be another referendum.
No, as it happens, I think that the deal will be an okay deal, because we're all trading nations. Our French and German partners, and they're the ones who carry most weight in the European Union. They have a huge amount of trade with the UK, and I'm not in the camp of thinking there's going to be some kind of punishment.
So what's the problem then? If you think there's going to be an okay deal, you would still vote against it?
Yes, because it's going to be less good than the status quo. The crucial thing is when you've got as we have at the moment.
Do you think we were all thick for voting for Brexit then?
No, I don't think. I respect the people.
Well, you clearly don't.
I do respect the people, but my own view is that when they see that the terms, even if they're okay terms by the standards of some of the blood-curdling scenarios that have been put forward at the moment, when they see that it's less good than the status quo, then I think that the case simply for saying, look, there's no point all this nonsense about completely rewriting our trade and international treaties, all for the sake of making our trade and our economic position worse.
Just be honest.
I think then we can.
Your entire strategy is basically to sabotage Brexit. That's it, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, I'm glad. Finally, we've had somebody who's had the guts to admit it.
Yes, I absolutely want to sabotage Brexit, but I do not want to do so in an undemocratic way. My view, because I'm a Democrat, I believe passionately in the working of our democratic institutions. I'm a parliamentarian. My own view, which is the reason why I think it will come to a referendum.
But you don't think we should have had a referendum in the first place?
No, actually,
it doesn't really tie with that, does it?
No, because it wasn't an issue of great concern to the British people. Let's be clear. Before David Cameron foolishly decided to hold this referendum in 2016, opinion polls were showing there was something like the 20th on the list of the priorities of the British people. People were much more concerned about education, health, jobs, all of that.
Totally agree with you on that.
The people who were really concerned about Europe, Ian, were people like you, who on the question of Europe are complete headbangers, for whom it is indeed the most important issue.
I think anybody who listens to this programme would not agree with that comment.
Well, we have free speech. You and I, we speak completely freely between us.
But just remember, I have control of the fader.
You do, so you may turn it off at any moment. But my view on this one is I wouldn't have held the referendum, not because I'm not a Democrat, but because it wasn't an issue of prime concern to the British people. My own view is that referendums should be reserved for issues of really acute concern. I think, for example, the union with England and Scotland, that is very much an issue.
Well, maybe we should have a second referendum on that.
No, the British people have decided on that one.
Yeah, because you agree with it. Because you agree with the result.
Because there's no great groundswell of opinion for another referendum. Indeed, even most of those who well,
there's no groundswell for a second referendum here, is there?
There is.
There isn't.
It's starting in this studio, Ian, as we speak.
You reckon?
Can't you feel the vibes coming over the table at the moment?
The vibe I'm feeling is that you are pitching yourself as the effective leader of the anti-Brexit campaign. Why are you doing that?
I'm simply doing my job. I'm a parliamentarian, and the job of parliamentarians is to give frank advice in Parliament and in debates. I see it as my job. There's no more important issue facing the future of the country at the moment than whether we're in or out of the European Union, and I have a duty to give my view.
As somebody who's never been voted in on anything, you're an appointed member of the House of Lords, you've never been voted into elected office, unless you can correct me on that.
I was once a local councillor.
For
the most important council in the country, the city of Oxford. And I can assure you, the city of Oxford, it carries debates.
But it's a bit rich, isn't it, for somebody who's unelected to lecture us about democracy?
Hold on. Parliament has two houses, Commons and Lords. People like you, Ian, lecture us night and day about parliamentary sovereignty and how it's being wrenched out of our hands by these Brussels bureaucrats. You can't then go and say that somehow it's illegitimate for the House of Lords to offer its view. You don't really believe that,
I don't believe that at all. You're putting words into my mouth.
So in that case, we're all of one mind here, and we both agree that I have a perfect right to speak.
Can you imagine that the House of Lords might reject the current Brexit bill?
No. Not for a moment, and nor do I think it would be reasonable for the House of Lords to do so.
Good, well, we've covered that.
What I think the House of Lords could do, though, is to say that we need processes in place that see that the British people are properly consulted about the final deal.
Robert is in Dulwich. Hello, Robert.
Yeah, hi. Good evening, gentlemen.
Hi.
Mr. Adonis, are you at all worried that you're going to cause a potential civil strife on the streets in the future if you're successful with thwarting Brexit? Is that something that you factor into your considerations? I mean, there's no point in having a debate with you about the clearly obvious logic that if you were to get a second meaningful vote, the Europeans are going to offer us a good deal. Why would they offer you a good deal? And everyone can see that. And that's why people are going to go out onto the street. You claim you can't see it, but the real reason is you're just seeking to sabotage Brexit.
I don't think that's...
You talk very nicely, you have all the words, you've got all the knowledge of how all the inside works, but on the outside, it just looks like someone who wants to just basically say to people, sorry, we're not going to listen to you, we're staying in the European Union. And you're going to have civil unrest if you carry on with it.
Is that something that does worry you?
I don't think that's fair. If you listen to what I said earlier, I do not think that parliamentarians alone can stop this move to Brexit because of the referendum that was held 18 months ago. I think that for the process to be stopped, it has to be stopped by the British people, and that's why I think a referendum on the Prime Minister's terms... And being a Democrat, if there's a majority for stopping it then I don't think people will be on the streets. I think everything will be fine.
Because I think there will be 17.4 million people who would feel very aggrieved, some of them more aggrieved than others. Personally, I would question the point of bothering to vote in the future if that referendum result was overturned. Now, you will call me a headbanger for saying that, but I think people would feel very let down. General elections are not the same as referendums.
You vote in general elections, and you vote in an election even if it produces a result you don't want, and you don't say, having got a result that you like, I am now refusing to vote in all future general elections because they
unfortunately,
might not
what you're doing is because you didn't get the vote you wanted, you're now saying that we have to have continued referendums until we do get the result. Is it best of 3, best of 5, best of 7?
No, the referendum's on very different issues. The referendum 18 months ago was on the principle of whether or not Britain should leave the European Union. The one which would be held in early 2019, in a year's time, would be on the actual deal that the Prime Minister has negotiated. And it's perfectly reasonable that the people should have the final say on the actual deal.
But if people on your side of the debate think that some of us were too thick to vote in the original referendum, wouldn't we be too thick to understand the deal that Theresa May comes up up with.
I haven't said that at all, Ian.
But most people on your side do say that.
You're putting words into my mouth. I've never said anything of the kind. I entirely respect the right of the British people to make big decisions on their own account. I entirely respect the result 18 months ago. The issue is whether the British people should also have a final say on the final deal.
OK, loads and loads of calls coming in. We'll get to more in the next 15 minutes. You're listening to LBC. I'm Ian Dale. It's 4:46.
This is LBC.
There are some moments that only happen once. Moments you want to be part of, and ones you just have to share with others. Baby's first steps, 21st birthday parties, or just daft moments at work. That's why you need to make sure you choose the right mobile network. At BT Mobile, we're so confident in our network, we give you a 30-day money-back guarantee. A whole month to see if it's right for you. Be there, BT.
New customers on SIM plans excludes handsets and regrades, refund and plan allowance only.
Ross Powell has the LBC travel news.
Thanks, Ian. A really busy one for the M25 this evening. On the Kent stretch, the anti-clockwise entry slip road is closed at junction 2 for the Darrant interchange because of an accident. There are delays going back to the Swanley interchange. Nearby, though, all lanes have just reopened anti-clockwise at junction 1B for Dartford. There was an accident there involving a lorry and a car, but it's now been opened up again. If you're heading towards the Hertfordshire stretch of the M25, there's a lane closed anti-clockwise between junction 25 for Enfield and 24 for Potters Bar. A mobile crane has broken down there, and that's causing delays. And if you're heading towards East Ham, the Barking Road remains closed off between Ron Leighton Way and the High Street North Junction following a serious accident. LBC Travel, I'm Ross Powell.
He carries that fear.
I don't know if you and I have the same ideas of freedom.
If it's close to home, it matters more.
LBC at the weekend. Majid Nawaz.
Why is the far right rising? I'll tell you. When you silence reasonable voices who are attempting to have a rational conversation around facts, then those extremist voices rise to the forefront.
Leading Britain's conversation. Majid Nawaz. Saturday and Sunday from 12 on LBC.
Save £120 on the Samsung Galaxy Tab A and enjoy a huge 15 gig of data for only £16 a month. Just one of the amazing offers in the Vodafone Big Winter Sale, in store and online. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
24-month agreement. Credit check and RPI increase apply. See vodafone.co.uk/terms. Ends 31st of Jan.
At the Co-op, selected packs of British meat including mince are now 2 for £5. So whether it's your favourite spag bowl, shepherd's pie or even homemade burgers, you can settle down to some good old-fashioned comfort food at a good old-fashioned price. Another New Year deal from the Co-op. Participating stores only. See sticker packs in store.
Divorce. It threatens the things you've worked hard for in more ways than you can imagine. Your home, savings, pension, and most of all, your relationship with your children. Don't let divorce cost you any more than it has to. Cordell & Cordell is dedicated to helping men in matters relating to divorce. Call now on 0330 60 60 161 or visit cordellcordell.co.uk. Office in central London. A partner men can count on.
Highways England is here to improve your journey. Have you noticed the red X's above you when driving on the motorway? Think they're not important? Think again. They mean there's an obstruction or danger up ahead. So if you see one, you must change lanes safely to avoid a penalty, or even worse. So when you see a red X, it's there for a reason. For more information on red X's, search online for smart motorways.
Check messages, check tweets, check likes, check the score, check tomorrow's weather, check mum's okay, check last minute tickets. Check photos from Pete's stag.
Oh, let me see.
My phone's just died.
We check our phones, tablets and computers over 100 times a day, but we don't check our travel, so we don't know about delays till we're stuck in them. Check our travel updates whenever you check in to help you get where you need to be. Search TfL Check Your Travel. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Get more for less with Mobalpa kitchens. Stylish on the outside, clever on the inside, with up to 20% more storage space than a standard size kitchen unit. Order now to pay no VAT for a limited time only. Find your nearest Mobalpa kitchen studio at mobalpa.co.uk.
Ian Dale at Drive on LBC.
9 minutes to 5 here on LBC. You're listening to Ian Dale at Drive. We have Lord Adonis with us, Andrew Adonis, former chair of the National Infrastructure Commission. You may want to ask him why he resigned from that. He may have very strong views on the position of the Transport Secretary, Chris Grayling, who we spoke to on the programme a couple of days ago.
My big concern, Ian, is that Chris isn't on the line because
he isn't, no.
Because there are big questions he's got to answer about rail fares and about the £2 billion bailout of Stagecoach and Virgin on the East Coast Line. And I'm told he's now in Turkey, having been in Qatar.
Well, I'll tell you what.
But I know that there are phones in Turkey.
If we
so
get Chris in Turkey, we'll give him priority.
If you could see he come straight through, because I'm very keen to ask him some questions.
If you'd like to watch us as well as listen to us, go to Facebook Live, the LBC Facebook page, or at lbc.co.uk. And of course, your calls 0345 6060 973. Steve in Kings Langley does not want to talk about Brexit. Steve, what's your question?
Hi, Ian. Hi, Mr. Adonis. Although I agree totally what you said about the Brexit situation, I don't want to talk about that, but I just wanted to tell Mr. Adonis that how HS2 has affected my family. Essentially, I spent 10 years building my house. I'm a builder with 40 years' experience. The house was valued at sort of 1.2 million. We ended up getting 900,000 for it. It took 2 years to sale. The stress and the trouble essentially has split my family up. I now live on a canal boat, and I'd just like to know how he would feel. I've lived in this country all my life. I did a 5-year apprenticeship, and now, it split my family up. My family lives 60 miles away with all the stress and pressure. I've got personal friends of mine that want to retire and downsize in Buckinghamshire, Great Missenden, Wendover, etc. And I'd just like him to know that, the compensation isn't available for everybody. Nobody wants to buy a house in an area where HS2 is going through.
So what's your question, Steve?
I'd like to know how he would feel, if he was in my position, essentially.
Andrew?
Well, Steve, I'm very, very sorry to hear about what's happened to your family. Of course, I don't know the precise circumstances. It's very hard for me to comment. But look, all I can say is...
Well, he's just told you, to be fair.
Yeah, no, but I don't know precisely why there was one valuation against another and why Steve got 900,000 rather than 1.2 million.
No, and it's not just me. It's hundreds of people throughout Buckinghamshire, throughout Hertfordshire, through Harefield. Parts of South Bucks, North Bucks, everywhere. I mean, my house was right near Chequers Estate. I've driven past there just this week to get some stuff, and they're the same houses for sale. Now, if a house is for sale forever, it never gets. I mean, basically.
The principle of compensation is that people should get the value of their house, and if you haven't, I'm very sorry to hear that. And I don't know why it was that didn't happen. So I can only say that I'm sorry to hear it. But
do you have any regrets about HS2?
Well, let's be clear that whenever you do these big infrastructure issues, and we've got exactly the same issues at the moment at Heathrow on the expansion of Heathrow Airport, then of course people are affected, and I have a huge amount of sympathy for those whose lives are affected and have to start replanning them and so on, because the infrastructure actually takes up their own premises. The only thing I can say is that as a country, if we said we could never do these big infrastructure developments because they affect individuals, then of course progress would stop. And the job of Parliament, and it's a difficult job and I fully accept it, is to strike the right balance between the rights of the individual and seeing they get proper compensation. And proper compensation should mean the proper value of their homes, but also getting these big projects underway.
Let's go to Fraser in Kenilworth. Hello, Fraser.
Hello, Ian. Mr. Lord Adonis, I'm sorry that Chris Grayling can't join the programme, but perhaps I can step in the meantime. I don't really want to comment on what you've had to say about Brexit. You've made that case quite clear and how you feel about it. But what I have been dismayed about is the way that you've wrapped up the East Coast mainline franchise business. You keep referring to it as a bailout, yet you've not made any reference to the fact that the reason that Virgin, who provide the service on that line, can't get the income from the increased trains which were proposed from 2019 is because Network Rail have not been able to upgrade the route, and the new intercity trains won't be ready at the proposed date that they were going to be. Now, the two things together has meant that their franchise, when they were...
OK, I need to get your question, Fraser. We haven't got too much time.
Why is it that Lord Adonis keeps talking about a bailout when in actual fact over the next 2 years Virgin will be paying £141 million to cover debt because the nationalised side of the railway has failed, Network Rail and the Department of Transport. Why does he keep saying about this bailout?
Let's be clear, it is a bailout. Because it is a bailout.
You bailed
because
out the East Coast Main Line, didn't you?
Yeah, but what I didn't do was allow... I didn't bail out the existing company. I took the franchise away from National Express.
It cost the taxpayer £1 billion to do.
But I took the franchise away from National Express. I did not give any big new contract to National Express.
But it still cost the taxpayer £1 billion, did it not?
But if we hadn't done that, it would have cost more to the taxpayer, because you would have set the precedent that all rail companies, if they're going through bad times, can apply to have their contracts renegotiated. And the really, really damaging thing that Chris Grayling has done is by saying to Virgin and Stagecoach that he's prepared to rip up the contract for the last 3 years when they were due to pay $2 billion of payments to the government. This, of course, now makes it open field for all train operators in the country to do so.
Have failed to meet their financial obligations to the taxpayer? Have they missed any payments?
They haven't up till now,
exactly.
but that's not the point. The point is the payments they were due to make under this contract between 2020 and 2023.
But if the railways were nationalised in the way that Labour wants, there wouldn't be any payments from the private sector to the taxpayer, would there?
Well, I'm not at the moment talking about the wider policy. I'm talking about what's happening on the East Coast. And at the moment, on the East Coast, the payments of $2 billion which were due from Stagecoach and Virgin between 2020 and 2023, those payments have been cancelled. And I think it's perfectly fair to describe that as a bailout.
Have you seen the contract between the Department of Transport and Virgin Trains?
Yes, it's published. It's on the website.
Right.
Yes.
And having read that contract, you still called on the Transport Secretary to resign?
Yes, because he has not explained adequately why he has let Stagecoach and Virgin off $2 billion of payments they were due to make to the government and therefore to the taxpayer between 2020 and 2023.
I don't remember anybody calling for you to resign as Transport Secretary when you cost the taxpayer £1 billion by taking it back into national ownership.
No, I didn't cost the taxpayer anything.
You did?
No, I didn't.
It was costed us £1 billion.
It was National Express that walked away from the contract. It was a fundamental difference. What's happened here is that the government, in the form of Chris Grayling, the Transport Secretary, has said to Stagecoach and Virgin that he is content for them to walk away from their contract. I never said that with National Express. I deeply regret the fact that National Express didn't fulfil their contract, but I did not say to them, if you walk away from your contract, I'm still going to allow you to keep on operating the trains. And that is what Chris Grayling has said to Stagecoach and Virgin. And as I say, that's not only bad in its own terms with these $2 billion of payments that were due to be made, but it sets a precedent for the rest of the industry.
You accept that Labour's policy being to renationalise the railways, that means a premium payment of £0 from private sector companies to the taxpayer. So the taxpayer loses out.
Well, it's not that straightforward, Ian, because what Labour's policy is that as the franchises come up, they would then be taken into state operation. And their view, I'm not on the Labour front bench, so I'm just telling you what the policy is. Their view is that the public sector could then run those contracts, those train services, every bit as efficiently, if not more so, than the private sector, so there will be no loss to the public. That's their view. And I hope it's, in the case of the East Coast, it was definitely the right thing to say to Virgin and Stagecoach that if they walked away from their contract, there would have been a state company and they wouldn't have been allowed to bid for new contracts.
Martin in Yorkshire has sent me a tweet saying, as a former education minister, do you think Toby Young was a suitable appointment to the board of the Office for Students?
I don't, given the views that he holds about appropriate behaviour. So, some of the things he said about which have been deeply misogynistic. I don't think those are appropriate views to square with being on the university regulator.
I agree. Having seen some of the tweets, I mean they're pretty base stuff. But then again, there's a Labour MP.
He's accepted that himself.
There's a Labour MP, Nick Clegg's successor, Jared. I can't remember his surname, who is also being accused of this sort of thing, and he's still an MP.
Well,
so if he's still an MP, what's wrong with Toby Young taking up this appointment?
Well, he's an MP elected by his constituents in Sheffield. I don't think anyone's proposing he should become the university regulator, and that's the issue in this case.
That is very true. But given that Toby Young has experience of setting up free schools, does have educational knowledge, isn't this sort of attack on him politically based rather than it's being masked as something, he's done these distasteful tweets? It's because he's on the right and been appointed, isn't it?
I'm struck that Conservatives haven't been rushing forward to defend him. That's been very notable in the last few years. In the last few days, you can always tell where something is going by who is and isn't prepared to defend, and almost no one seems to have said that they think that this is an appropriate appointment.
Right, Catherine is in Manchester. Hello, Catherine.
Oh, hello, Ian. Thanks for having me on. Getting back to Brexit, your favourite subject, Ian, I'm afraid.
I can think of many more subjects that I would rather discuss, but carry on.
Me too. I've spent the best part of a year talking to people in Manchester, and I just wanted to say to Lord Adonis, the mood really has changed up here. I've seeing loads and talking to loads of regretters now who really do have a desire to vote on the deal now that they feel more informed. And my question is, what should I be saying to them? What can they do to try and secure a referendum on the final deal?
Well, I'm very, very glad to hear that, because that's very much my view, is there should be a referendum on the final deal. What they should do is write to their MP. Indeed, what they should also do is constantly phone into Ian's programme.
They do, believe me.
Ian, who I've got great admiration for, is a man of the people. He is swayed. By the views of his callers.
Actually,
and what you need is to flood his switchboard every time he does a phone in.
In all seriousness, there are many issues where that does actually happen. If you look on universal credit, for example, and the bedroom tax, I have changed my views on those things, partly because of what I hear from our callers.
Well, let me let you into a secret on this programme. I think Ian's view might be changeable on this. I think if his great fan club, and it is huge, I was looking at how many Twitter followers he's got earlier, if his great fan club were to start weighing in, then who knows, Ian in 6 months' time might become the chief national champion of a referendum on the final deal in the name of the voice of the British people.
Dream on, Andrew. Do you regret working for the government as chair of the National Infrastructure Commission, given that you've just resigned from it?
I hugely regret that we got into a position at the end where I couldn't continue, because it's not my...
But what a change.
It's not my style. Well, we had two things happening. The first we had, unfortunately, was the East Coast bailout that we've just discussed, and I think that made my position untenable just in terms of infrastructure, because I was saying...
But why not resign at the time? Why wait till your skiing holiday in Austria to make the decision?
Well, this all happened in early December, so I wasn't exactly hanging around. You know, it was early December, and a lot of the exchanges...
Is it something you really need 3 weeks to think about, though?
Well, it was the way it developed was in mid-December. You know, I was having exchanges with officials about whether the government had behaved appropriately and so on. This was going on until very close to Christmas, and I'm sorry that happened. On the question of Brexit, you're quite right. It's been clear for some time, and I've hardly sort of hid my light under a bushel that I've been strongly opposed. The reason why the situation, in my view, has become so difficult now is that the Brexit legislation is about to come to the House of Lords, and that means I'm going to be day after day criticising the government, and it's one thing to issue periodic salvos. There's nothing
final
to do
question just on that. Tony Blair said today that Labour would annihilate the Tories if they changed their position on Brexit and came out for Remain. Is he right?
I do believe so, yes, because I don't like words like annihilate. I don't use those aggressive words, which I'm much...
I don't know. I've been watching you on Twitter over the last few months. You've come up with far worse than that.
Ian, as you know, I'm a snowflake. I don't use words like annihilate.
Well, look, Andrew,
but do I think Labour could win if it takes a strong anti-Brexit position? Definitely, because that's where I think the mood of the British people now is.
Andrew, it's been an absolute delight talking to you. You've got our phone lines going very well, I have to say, which is why we've gone over 5 o'clock, which we never do. So well done for doing that. That's Andrew Adonis. You will be able to watch this back on Facebook Live, and it'll be on our website very, very shortly. This is LBC. It's 5 minutes past. On
FM, online, on your